Hello, my name is Brother Sean. This is a heart reflection, looking at how do we perceive our Father, Mother God. But before I begin, I would like to read to you something from a beautiful book by Richard Rohr, a Franciscan. His book is called Simplicity, the Freedom of Letting Go. He says, retreats and counselling for priests are a main feature of my work. And although these men know a great deal about theology, I found to my surprise that their image of God is 90% a mixture of the image of their own mothers and fathers. And for some reason they themselves are always amazed when they discover this. If their mother was harshly critical, so is their God. If their father was distant and cold, likewise their God is distant and cold. I would encourage you to examine the extent to which this applies to you, to your life as well. Again, we have to break through the images to find who God really is. And he says, I promise you there's nothing to be afraid of here. That really struck a chord with me, because I was the eldest son of 9. I was born in Scotland, yes, but I was brought up in Dublin, in a Catholic family, full of religion, no spirituality. My father was a good-looking man, and the voice of Mario Lanza. They say he looked like Errol Flynn, and I agree, a stunningly beautiful man. And my mom was an exceptionally talented woman, an interior designer and colour consultant. But looking back on their life, I shared this from love. They weren't cut out for parenting. They were professional people who were on a journey, and it was about self. But my mum's occupation came to an abrupt end when she got pregnant with me. And every 12 months she delivered another, with the exception of the last, where there was a 2-year break, thank God. My mom was very superstitious, because when we had thunder and lightning, we were all locked in the wardrobe as young children. She'd cover the mirrors, she'd switch off the telly or the radio, and we'd be all huddled together, frightened for our life. So from a very early age, our mother had instilled in us a religious superstition. And we were always threatened with Jack Frost. We were always put down. And my father, Lord rest his soul, was a womanizer. He attracted women. He had the charm. He was thoroughly spoilt by his mother. He came from a very well-connected family, and money was no problem. Whatever he wanted, he got. Excuse me, even going to boarding school and on to university. But he wasn't a loving father. He fulfilled his duties by being part of the birthing process. But he was never there. He was always out with his friends, come home drunk. And if my mom had a problem with one of us, which she always did, he would then take off his thick leather belt and lash us with the knuckle end and tear strips off our back. He was a bully, and I was frightened of him. So growing up, I had this image of God as being a tyrant, and my mom used me as a go-between, being the eldest son. But then at 16, my heart was guided to join a contemplative community of nursing monks. in Southern Ireland. And I wasn't aware of this, but years later, I often wondered, why is my mum so cold with me, indifferent with me? And my dear friend of 30 years said, your mum resents you. Because the day you left home to enter the monastery, you forced her to look after her own children. Because from the age of 11, when you were forced to leave school, you took care of the children, not your mum. So you see, as a young nursing monk in the Catholic Church, I would sneak out of the dormitory at 2 a.m. I'd get a penance if I was found out, but I did it in a very discreet way. Tiptoe, tiptoe. I'd end up in the chapel looking at the cross, crying my eyes out. Lord, if this is really you, if you are really here, will you come and put your arms round me? Because I'm so alone, I'm frightened, and I need your help. I didn't have a miraculous experience until later on in life when I was 50. And when I look back, I realize, to my shame, to my horror, that my image of God was a tyrant. And when I used to hear the gospel of the prodigal son, I didn't think I was the son. Well, I did, but it was made clear that I was his brother, envious, deceitful, jealous. My relationship with God was rooted in fear, based on the relationship my father had with me and me with my dad. And you know, I loved my dad. Shame he never loved me. He fed me with fear. And my mother, every time I looked at her, she was crying, stressed. It wasn't a happy household. It was a dysfunctional family. But thank God my grandmother reared me till I was 11. And then I had to leave the comfort of my grannies to go and live at home and look after the Bradley brats. Forgive me. But now, as I'm a lot older, I realize I wasted so many years where I had this misconception of God, the tyrant. But now I see God as a loving father, mother. Because when I hit rock bottom myself 16, 17 years ago and became mentally ill and lost everything through Prozac, through my disinhibited, disassociated behavior, where I ended up having to retire from my nursing profession on ill health, and where I lost out on so many things through the impact of mental illness, I can honestly say that that was my breakthrough. I was able to see God in a more loving, tangible way. Because when I knelt in the gutter and asked God for help, help came. And over the years now, I see our Father, Mother God as being a compassionate, selfless God, not a tyrant. But lurking in the back of my mind, when I'm vulnerable, I get a déjà vu experience where my dad comes to mind. And do you know, when my father was dying, my brothers and sisters found it hard to forgive him because he was cruel. But I was guided by my heart to go and anoint my father's feet with the blessed oils of spikenard. And I was frightened. Though he was unconscious, God rest him, God love him, I went in like a little boy and I was petrified in case he jumped up and started hitting me. But I went in with the support and love of God. And I remember placing the oils in my hands, and as soon as I touched my father's feet, I became aware that he was abused too. that though he had all the materialism, all the trappings of success and status, that he was a little boy who was hurting too. And I asked God to give me the strength to say, Dad, I forgive you. I forgive you because I love you. And because I know that under all of that glamour and glitz and power and money you had never matured because you'd never known unconditional love. And I said, Dad, I forgive you. I want you to go now. Cross over and go to your reward, for you have suffered much. But I guess he was hanging on, and he lingered for 2 years, waiting for my brothers and sisters to forgive him. So as their eldest brother, I wrote to them. I shared with them what I'd done. It wasn't easy. I didn't want their approval or their pity, but I pleaded with them. Please go and say to Dad you forgive him, because he's waiting for you to say you forgive him so he can cross over. They never did. And he lingered on and on and on. And then after his death they did a post-mortem, and although he had Alzheimer's for 9 years and deteriorated in the last 3 years of his life, they found he was riddled with cancer, and he knew pain. That's why he was so restless and violent and aggressive with the nursing staff. So you see, sometimes we have to come before our God and say it as it is. If we find God not a loving God, and we base our relationship with God on the relationship we had with our mom and dad, don't you think that that needs healing? Don't you think that we should name that, bless it, and release it to God? Well, I did, but it didn't come easy. I fought it tooth and nail, and I prayed long and hard, and the message was the same message from Jesus to his disciples that he gave to me. Forgive 70 times, 7 times. In other words, there's no end to forgiveness. Because if you don't forgive, you're not forgiven. And if you say you've forgiven someone, but you will never forget what they did, you're still not forgiven. Because forgiveness and forgetting what happened go hand in hand, like hand in glove. So if what I've shared with you resonates with you, go into your heart and ask your heart, am I bearing a grudge against someone that has hurt me? Or have I hurt another knowingly and deliberately to disempower them? Ask for forgiveness. Turn it round, because the more we stay locked in that mindset of fear and unforgiveness, we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow, to be healed. Try it. And I pray that your relationship with God is nothing like the relationship I had as a young nursing mom. And that is tragic, isn't it? But thankfully now, all that has corrected itself by taking that leap of faith, as painful as it was, and standing in front of my birth father and saying, Dad, I love you and I forgive you. Go home to God. Thank you for watching.